Welcome to the program. I am Nifemi Oguntoye. It's Armed Forces Remembrance Day, and we want to take a moment this morning to acknowledge and honor the brave men and women of the Nigerian Armed Forces. Today, January 15th, is usually earmarked to celebrate members of the armed forces. It's set aside to commemorate the sacrifices for both serving and fallen heroes who have laid down their lives in defense of our nation. It's a good time to also specifically remember the 6 Nigerian soldiers who lost their lives just a few days ago on January 4th in the Damboa incident, where they repelled and killed 34 terrorists in Sabongeri. Their sacrifice is not their selflessness and bravery will never be forgotten. And to our soldiers, past and present, we say thank you. Your sacrifice in defending our nation, upholding our democracy, and protecting our people will forever be honored and remembered. May we continue to draw inspiration from your courage as well as dedication to duty. May your sacrifices not be in vain, and may we strive to build a nation that is worthy of your ultimate sacrifice. On the show this morning, we are back discussing the issue of cash scarcity that usually characterize festive seasons in Nigeria and what regulatory organs of government are doing about it. We're hearing from the Central Bank of Nigeria that it's imposed sanctions on 9 deposit money banks for failing to ensure the availability of Naira notes via ATMs during the 2024 festive season. According to a statement on Tuesday by the Acting Director, Corporate Operations of the Apex Bank, Hakama Ali, each bank was fined 150 million naira for breaching the Apex Bank's cash distribution guidelines. The enforcement, we understand, followed spot checks on the affected bank's branches during the Utah, a time of high demand for cash. Among those sanctioned were Fidelity Bank PLC, Keystone Bank PLC, Union Bank PLC, Globus Bank PLC, there's Providus Bank, Zenith Bank, United Bank for Africa, and Sterling Bank PLC. The CBN says the fines would be deducted directly from the accounts of the sanctioned banks held with the CBN. The bank is also revealing that its investigations and monitoring activities will continue to target issues such as cash hoarding and rationing, particularly by points of sale operators. By the way, did you know that POS charges rose by 100% in 2024, accounting for an average of 4% charge on any POS transaction in Nigeria? In fact, they say POS transactions cost Nigerians a total of 167 billion in 2022, up to 214 billion in 2023, and the estimation for last year is about 500 billion naira. What does this mean for the economy and for also the CBN's attempt to get the ATMs working again? I'm joined on the show this morning by economist and investment specialist Dr. Vincent Nwani. Dr. Nwani, thank you so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Thank you for having me, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. 150 million naira fine imposed on each of the 9 banks, we understand, will be deducted directly from their accounts by the Apex Bank. What do you make of this penalty?
Well, I will want to first of all commend the Central Bank for finally showing some response that some of us have been clamoring for over the years. You know, they say it's better late than never. You know, the challenge is, for me, is this 150 million naira fine awarded to these 9 banks enough to deter them or to whip them into line to do the right thing moving forward with regards to ensuring that our ATMs in Nigeria are working efficiently, and the deliberate cash scarcity in those ATMs is stopped moving forward. That is remaining to be seen. For me as an analyst, I don't think, or I don't believe that this sanction is enough to deter them. Maybe we may do more, a bit more often, or even move from cash plus something, maybe suspending them from rendering a juicy service might be more deterrent to them. And why do I say so? A situation where operation of POS have completely replaced the operation of ATM in Nigeria. For instance, in terms of volume, the number of ATMs in Nigeria or reduced by about 5% between 2023 and 2024. You know, from over 17,000 units of ATM in Nigeria to a little bit over.
They literally shut them down.
Over 16,000 units. They shut about 1,000 down. But the remaining ones that are working partially. Even in Victoria Land, where we are right now, where some of these big banks have what they call ATM gallery. I personally visit these places. Sometimes you go 4 times, there is no cash. In the main ATM gallery attached to their head offices or to their mega offices. Do you know that during this same period, the transaction on POS in Nigeria increased by 77%. By 77% at the same period, hitting about 84 trillion. During this period, the transaction on ATM reduced by 29%, from 14 trillion in 2023 to about 12 trillion in 2024. So these are indicators for us to see.
We'll talk more about that shortly. You are trying to build a relationship between the POS and the ATMs. Yeah. We'll touch on that, you know, in the course of this conversation. But I'd like us to just talk about this 150 million naira fine. You don't expect it to have any significant impact on the bank's operations and profitability? Like
I said, if you are in business, what you normally look at is the relationship between costs and profit. You know, if banks, with your sharing ratio, whatever, they are making about 500 billion from the charges they impose on Nigerians to withdraw their cash through POS in just 1 year. You can imagine.
Only on charges?
Yes, only on charges. And I've spoken to some of my friends in the operations department of some of these banks, and they were able to just run their cost profile to show that the cost of maintaining these ATM machines, and not just in supplying electricity, putting inverter, you know, the security issue, and even the cash movement, you know, all this cash in transit movement, the cost associated to cash and cash maintenance and that facility, you know, is a bit heavy on their cost of operation within that department. You know, so this is just a cost management. But what are we talking about? Banks, we know, are probably the only sector that is even gaining from the depressed economy. We've seen their profit growing by astronomical numbers over the years. You know, so trying to say that they are doing what they are doing in order to reduce the cost of operating this ATM doesn't really add up. And what are we talking about? Nigeria is one of the countries in the emerging market where we have the lowest number of POS per 1,000. As we speak now, we have about 14 ATM machines per 100,000 is what we have in Nigeria. In countries like Egypt, we have about 3 ATM machines per 100,000. So in terms of per capita of ATM machine, Nigeria is one of the lowest in the world. But even those lowest is still not functioning. And the people suffering this implication are the poorest of the poor that will want to help. You know, the big men can transfer, they have other, you know, credit card, different ways, of doing their transaction. But the guys that will need to withdraw 20,000, 10,000, 5,000, they need to pay 200 naira to withdraw 5,000.
They need to pay
400 naira to withdraw 10,000 are most affected.
But what more do we know about the CBN cash distribution guideline? What specific requirements did you think the banks failed to meet to attract this fine?
Unfortunately, I am not in the regulatory department of CBN, neither am I in the operation department of these commercial banks. You know, but over time, CBN had issued warnings to them that these ATM machines need to work, whether it is public holiday, whether it is weekend or whatever.
Because it sounds like we're placing all the responsibility on the banks, that they are responsible to ensure seamless flow of cash. But when you go to them, what they say is they don't have the cash. You don't think the Apex Bank also shares in this responsibility? They are supposed to supply cash to these deposit banks, right?
Oh, thank you very much. You know, there is this silent relationship between the banks and POS operators. Between the banks and POS operators. You know, and unfortunately, like I said, I've read out the number of what POS operators did in last year, about 84 trillion, you know, transaction done on that platform. So that is where the major cash, live cash, is residing.
You think they get their cash from the banks?
I don't think so, but like I said, there is a silent, undocumented relationship between.
Because as of December last year, we were reporting that there were no cash in the banks, and that POS operators had to mop up the cash from markets, you know, and they had to find other ways to get the cash. My question really has to do with, if the banks are saying we don't have cash, should we hold them responsible for that in the real sense of it?
You know, this cash management has its value chain. Like you said, CBN, Apple's bank, their own is to issue currency and make sure it flows. The commercial banks and other types of banks. But there are one intermediary that is very important here, which is I can call cash in transit operators. You know, that you know, move this money maybe from the market to the bank and from the bank to the PO. You know, they are very, very important to relate with as far as this conversation is concerned. You know, I'm not going to make any case for banks, but we have seen banks doing as much as they can to ensure that they cut their costs, reduce risk as much as possible, and make money through through the soft channels of, I can call it non-interest income, fees, you know, charges and thereabout. They are comfortable in doing those things, especially where the risk is at the lowest. Every businessman will really need to do that. And that is why we need the central bank. And I've said that this cash we say, bank is saying that it's not available. If the CBN can up the sanction beyond just cash, what is 150 million for a bank? It's not even up to a drop of water in their ocean of revenue. If they can up it by threatening or even withholding or suspending a particular service that is a bit juicy for them, maybe for 1 month, I think that will be. This cash we say is not available. I assure you, they will find it and put it in the ATM machines.
So this growing reliance on POS and the associated charges, there are conversations about how it reflects the broader burden of cashless policy in Nigeria. You are drawing the nexus between ATMs, for instance, and POS. You also seem to believe that banks are the sole recipients of the advantages in this regard. When you consider the trillions of profits they announce on a yearly basis. What is that relationship? Especially if POS people are saying, or if it's been reported that the POS aren't even getting the money from the banks. How do you think banks benefit from the proliferation of POS in the country?
I want to address the first way you say, I don't believe that banks are the sole beneficiaries of the cashless policy in Nigeria. We are all beneficiaries, you and I. Seamless transaction, increase in transaction, increase in velocity of circulation, security, and you can keep up. But we are saying that cashless policy shouldn't be a burden on the poorest of the poor via POS transaction. It shouldn't be a channel through which inflation trickles down to the economy. I was in the Lagos International Trade Fair held in early November last year. And it was a general complaint that the goods sold or purchased during that 10-day event was the prices of those goods was impacted by 1% because of POS charges. So something needs to be done about that. That is on one side. The other part of the comment you made about CBN, about the banks having access to cash, you know, like I said, something needs to be done to overhaul the whole value chain around cash and cash management, from CBN to the bank, to cash in transit operators, to the POS operators. Now, you talk about, is there any form of collusion between POS agents or operators and the bank? Yes and no. Yes and no. Like I said, there is an unverified, undocumented allegation that something that looks around revenue sharing might be happening. We don't know. And that is why we're saying, CBN, please, look beyond just visiting ATM machines to know whether there's cash or not, or whether they are working, to really look at the whole value chain to see where, because we've been in this country for a long time, these things were not happening at this scale. There must be vested interest around this cash scarcity and the burden on the poor. This same year, 2024, that we just finished, Nigerians suffered, have to pay a price around energy subsidy that was removed. We paid a price around custom duty that was benchmark with the new exchange rate. We have to pay a price around the electricity tariff that was also jacked up, depending on the band you are, by 300, 400, 200%, as the case may be. And here, POS, we will now have to pay money, pay interest to get the money that belongs to you. Something needs to happen. It's everywhere, but something needs to happen around.
But at some point, you couldn't even get the new nets except you are willing to buy them in the real sense of it. But with the increasing use of digital payment systems, do you think CBN should still focus more on promoting alternative cash distribution? Perhaps this is a call to ramp up mobile banking and get more people enrolled.
To be honest, even in countries that imbibed the digitalization payments or services in US, in Europe, they still use cash. They still use cash. You can never erode cash. There are some local governments in Nigeria. Local government, we have, is it 720-something local governments in Nigeria, where we have maybe 1 or 2 banks. The whole local government. In fact, I heard from Anyocha North, a local government in Delta, say for about 2 or 3 years, we don't have one single bank operating in that local government. That have 28 or 29 communities. Thank God for UBA that I'm not advertising them, that just started operation 2 months ago. So people need to even travel, to the state capital in Asaba, to and fro, taking that 30 minutes plus the cost to get this cash into. These are the issues Nigerians are dealing with. And like I said before, it is another burden causing inflation that CBN also is fighting. So if CBN is going to fight inflation successfully, it's not just about food inflation that we keep on reading every day and enjoying. Some of these miscellaneous channels through which inflation trickles down to the poorest of the poor and to the rural area need to also be looked into. And one of those channels is POS charges.
I think the figure is 776, the local government areas we're talking about. Okay. But you also know that banks want to be at the center of commerce where, real transaction is taking place. So there are rural areas where you go to, you find banks there, but they are often deserted. What are the economic dynamics behind that? Especially when you see that banks don't flourish in those rural areas, you wonder, how do you motivate them to keep providing service, for instance, if they are not patronized?
Of course, banks are in business. They are not charity organization. Neither are they government to provide welfare to the poorest of the poor. So they have their metrics for knowing where to site their operation, physical operation or the other. And that is why the POS channel, the mobile money, and some other channels are also alternative channels to bank the unbanked, especially in the rural areas. The point I'm just trying to make when I was talking about some local government not even having banking presence. Is just to buttress the fact that citizens need to travel far, they need to handle cash, and so you cannot really take away the operations of the POS. They are doing a good job. We're only talking about crowding out the services of ATM or the banks. Again, a local government headquarter, I think and I believe, should have somewhat presence of physical presence of 1 or 2 banks in Nigeria. These are some of the things that CBN probably need to look at, because even if they are operating through POS or some other channels, they still need to visit bank to maybe to address 1 or 2 personal issues or customer service issues. They don't need to travel for 1 hour, 2 hours to the nearest bank branch before they can address some of these issues.
What do you consider the impact, perhaps potential risks or benefits to the economy, the growing reliance on POS transactions?
Yeah, like I said before, on the positive side, POS have assisted in maybe improving inclusion, financial inclusion. in the country. If you look at the data published by FINA, you know, it's very clear that Nigerians' financial inclusion is improving. I think it's about, unincluded Nigeria is less than 34% now, all the way from 54% 4 years ago. So that's a great deal. The only side is the fact that Nigeria have to part with 160 billion in 2022, 200 and something billion in 2023, and about 500 billion in 2025, sorry, in 2024, to service or not to withdraw their money from POS machine. We are saying that it is a bit on the high side. Addressing the costs. Just last year alone, the inflation, the last inflation numbers published, I think in December, was about 34%. But during the period, the charges on POS machine increased by 100%. Does it match? I don't think so. So I'm saying that this central bank, which is the regulator, need to be a bit granular.
Can that space also be regulated? I
believe everything should be regulated. If we leave this country, there is nothing that is not regulated. Everything is regulated, even barbing somebody's hair, you know, not to talk of handling cash. It should be regulated. It should. And they are not, if there is any regulation there, it is still probably at the surface level.
Absolutely. And it's perhaps why you go there in the morning and they change these prices at will. I mean, depending on the availability of the cash.
You can imagine you go to buy fuel in an established open filling station, and the attendant is telling you, I don't collect, I don't have POS, you cannot transfer, it must be cash. It's okay. What do? I don't have cash. It's okay. Go and talk to that POS. So you see collusion, and the lady will tell you, if you're going to pick 10,000, you're going to give me 500. That is what percent. That's huge, you know. So you see those collusion that even businesses are beginning to merge with POS operators to make gain. You know, they share this profit at the end of the day. How do we move forward from here? So I'm just trying to say that this collusion and some of the profit making around POS and the business operators or the banks, there is a collusion somewhere. It needs to be investigated. I don't have the answer now, but because it has happened to me. Where I went to filling station, I have my phone to transfer, I have my POS, my card, and the guy said, I don't have POS, and you must give me cash. I have to go and buy 20,000 with 1,000 naira. So, if this happened to the grassroots or somebody at the lowest part of our economic pyramid, what will be the implication? And this continues to go on every hour, every day, every month, every year. And by the time you calculate it, it becomes the 500 billion we're talking about. Some states in Nigeria, their annual budget is less than 500 billion in 2024. It's important that we put a relative interpretation to this number so that we see that, yes, it is flimsy when you are paying 200 naira, but if you aggregate it, it's quite a big number.
And you're saying that the CBN has to be able to also regulate the POS transactions in Nigeria. You know, even when they agree that you make transfer at filling stations, they demand that you add bank charges.
And you are saying it shouldn't be regulated?
In fact, you know, they tell you to add bank charges, and that's also perhaps one issue that you are, while we're encouraging, you know, digital transfers and transactions, I think there are still challenges with the many charges that, you know, that you incur from your banks. Or do you think that's the standard requirement globally?
No, it's not the standard requirement globally at all. You know, and good enough, we have places we can copy from. You know, if you look at the and every year, there's problem. Even the ATM we are talking about, ATM is not working. ATM is not working. You go walk into ATM machine that used to dispense 20,000 naira.
You can't get more than...
You know, just at one swap.
Yes.
I have withdrawn 40,000 naira from at one. It's going to give you 5,000 naira. Some maximum 10,000 naira. And they want you, by the time you do the third time, they start charging you. Fees and fine and charges need to be revisited by central bank. Because I can tell you that the ratio between non-interest income and interest income that banks are reporting now and compared to 10 years ago have really grown by about 500%.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Let us take a short break, Dr. Wan. Tweet to us at TVC News On. Remember to use the hashtag this morning. Dr. Vincent Wane, thank you for staying the course on the program.
Thank you.
So you're saying that this CBN's enforcement is not necessarily going to lead to improved cash availability during ATMs, especially during peak periods?
If my memory serves me right, this is not the first time CBN is even sanctioning banks for
in this regard.
regard for one breach or the other regarding cash management and POS. This is not the first time at all. But this, of course, this is the biggest fine or sanction by CBN in terms of weight. You know, of course, if we compare it with the former exchange rate, maybe you can level it to be the same thing. So, but I'm trying to say that if you look at the profitability or turnover of these banks in trillions, you know, against 150 million, of course, you know, but maybe the reputation or the brand, you know, the public opinion around that may maybe spoil them. But in the next 3 months, everything will fizzle out again and they'll go back and relax. So that's why I'm saying that if it's going to be cash fine, let it be consistent. But beyond cash fine, if they fine you before and they fine you one thing again, it has to be cash plus something. You know, with that, they will know that it's no longer business as usual. Because if banks are not benefiting directly or sharing commission revenue from PS operators, they may be benefiting from reporting underwhelming costs for not making the POS to work, sorry, the ATM to work. There must be benefit to bank, either from the point, serious benefit, either at the point of these POS charges gaining directly from it, or the point of reducing their costs significantly. Whatever it is, they need to either relinquish a particular service or I don't know, but CBN probably will know the best, because this is a period where the current administration is doing so many things to ameliorate the pains, you know, Nigerian palace, hunger in the land, you know, the stress of reforms, you know, palliatives here and there, policy here and there. You know, if central bank can also assist government to look at this, because this is a direct impact on the poorest of the poor, I think the better for it.
I'd like us to talk about digital payment solutions briefly, how you think CBN's regulatory environment can evolve in response to demand in that regard and protection of customers. Recently, CBN reportedly fined some of the fintechs for not adhering to the know your customer strategy, process of the CBN. I usually have problems trying to get the code to pay for electricity. Okay, we'll get back to that conversation. George has called in from Ikeja. Good morning, Mr. George. How are you today?
I'm fine. Good morning, Nifemi, and good morning to the guests.
Thank you. Good morning.
The fine that CBN imposed, in my view, is too small. That is not going to use a chicken change for them. It cannot force them to change their pattern. You go to an ATM machine and you want 20,000 naira. If the bank is not your bank, you have to withdraw 7 times or 6 times before you can get that 20,000 naira. And each time they deduct money. What kind of thing is that? The CBN governor promised aggressive regulation when he assumed office. I have not seen that aggressive regulation in the banking system and with our monetary policy generally. Whenever the CBN governor comes out and makes people to see that there is a regulatory body, you see that things change for a moment. For example, the foreign exchange. Each time the CBN governor comes out and says, look, this and that must happen, you see that the rate drops. That is to say that the actual rate we are having is artificial. The CBN governor should wake up. He should simply wake up. We have been waiting for him. I've been saying this thing. If you recall, I've called this issue severally to make the same point. We need a CBN government that can stand the test of the challenges we have in our country. Nigeria is not a country where you manage with flippant hands. That's just what I have to say on this matter. You go to banks, you will not see any mint note. But go to a party, you will see mint notes for sale. Where is it done? I thought when you promised aggressive regulation, you will see changes in these things. In the normal, under normal, the expert there can tell you, under normal circumstances, when notes are printed, the CBN ensures that after 2 years or so of circulation, that note gets to CBN, they don't allow it to come out again. They bring out mint notes in replacement. But whether mint notes are even going to function now, we don't know. Now, the few that they get, it goes to parties. It doesn't come. Who has ever gone to CBN, a bank counter, and get mint note? I don't know of any. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Judge. But are we considering the broader implication on the economy if we, make banks pay more, if we bring in stiffer penalties? Perhaps that's what the CBN is considering.
What is the implication on the economy? We're saying that why the manufacturing companies and the press agree, across sectors, and if we are looking at the numbers coming from Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, banks are smiling, and they are smiling very heavily. So, like the caller said, I think his name is George. Yeah, what is the 150 million naira on the balance sheet of these banks is less than a drop of water in their ocean, and I said it before. See, the incentive not to allow the POS machines the ATM machines to work by banks. The incentive not to allow it is quite juicy compared to the fine we're seeing. That's what we're talking about here. Because I've said before that even the number of ATM in Nigeria is too small to our geography, to our population. I've made that point. Only 16,000, only physical ATM machines. It's about 14 to every 100,000 Nigerians. In poorer countries like us, it's about 33. But even the 16,000 we have are not working. Where I used to work in bank, 2010, 2011. And one of the things we report every Monday is the downtime, which of the POS, which branch, and we take it very serious. What have changed? I think what they are now reporting is that they will have to, bank probably they are now sanctioning the officers that kept a POS machine, ATM center working more than 3 or 4 hours. Before we sanctioned any branch that their POS doesn't work for up to 1 hour when I was in bank. What has changed? So I'm saying that the incentive to keep this machine redundant, ineffective, is higher than the sanction CBN, and it's even coming too late.
I say that the POS is becoming more popular than the ATM. That's why you keep saying, that's why you keep calling ATM POS.
Exactly. For me, it's long I got money from ATM or even from cash from the bank. It's POS all of us are using.
Let's take Salami's call from Abuja. Good morning, Mr. Salami. How are you today?
Good morning.
Good morning. Please go ahead with your contribution.
How's today?
Great.
Sorry, I wanted to contribute towards this CBN fine on a 9 back on the shortage of the cash shortage.
All right, please go ahead.
Now, the challenge I'm having is that I was in bank workers years back. Most time when you go to CBN to withdraw, they will sometimes tell you that there's no money available. And also, with time, if you look at it, that most time that money is being given to commercial bank, they also still give them the bad note that they'll just shut out. I don't know whether they just arrange it and remove the bad one and return the bad one back to the circulation. So I think it's best is that CBNs should wake up. CBNs should wake up and release enough money to circulate, release enough money to bank, whereby they can be able to use it and give it to our people through ATM. If you look at it by November, it happened by November, December. Every year, November, December, you have shortage of cash in Nigeria. Shortage of cash. You even go to CBN, they will tell you that they don't have cash. So please, CBNs will work up. This is not a matter of sanction. You cannot be sanctioned. If they have the money available with them, they cannot eat it and to give it to the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salami, for your contribution. It is, talking about the role of the CBN. But we'll get back to that. I think we talked about that earlier as well. I was talking about the digital payment solution, the fact that fintechs now seem to be more efficient than traditional banks. Anytime I want to pay for electricity, most times I get to call my bank to send me the code long after I've paid for it. And then recently my wife now said, let me show you something, one of these new fintechs. The moment she paid, in fact, the acknowledgement page of payment comes with a digit. And then I'm wondering, so what has been happening to all of these big banks? How do you think, the CBN can evolve its regulatory process? Because many of these fintechs now are now being fined because they don't seem to, go through all of the bureaucratic ways the CBN wants things to be done.
Whether I would like it or not, the fintechs, the digital banks, I don't want to call their name here, they are coming on board over the last few years, have really changed things. It has impacted Nigerians. Situation where your phone number is your account number and all those things, It's great innovation. But make no mistake, even the traditional banks, the big banks are also struggling, they are margin, some of them are even shareholders in those, you never can tell. But they're also trying to compete, because they know that a pie of their business or their revenue is being absolutely weighed off. Even the reputation, there are a particular segment of Nigeria now, they don't remember the names of these big banks. Give me that. I don't want to call the names of some of those very popular digital banks or fintech. So it's a great stuff, and I'm happy that CBN have come down on them to ensure that the KYC is upheld, because a lot of recent, can I say, fraud, 419 in local palace is also increasingly on those channels where it's very difficult to trace. And also CBN is coming hard on them. But I joined the first caller, George, by saying that CBN need to be a bit more aggressive and prompt and fast with their regulation. I don't know whether it is a capacity issue or not. The POS system is not being regulated. There is no sanction. That place needs to be cleaned up. We need to clean up. Something is happening there. The same way we are trying to clean up the digital banks. All right.
Onome has called in from Delta. Good morning, Onome.
Yeah, good morning. Please, so this is very, very interesting. See, this happened to me. I was in the banking hall. You don't know they reserve this money for POS. They will tell you they can't give you more than 5,000. But whoever brings in money, the tellers, they rush to gather the money. You will see maybe a POS person waiting for that card. You will see to send the bank. And once you count the money, 50, 100, 200, straight to the POS. And they are paid. The POS pays for the money. Go to filling station, they'll tell you they don't want transfer, they want cash. Instantly, you will see a POS person behind collecting the money. So I don't know, I just said I should just contribute this, but it's really painful that we can't really get money from the bank again. It's really painful. You go to POS, you want to take 50,000, they charge you maybe 2,000, 1,500. It's not fair, it's not fair.
Thank you, Onome, for your contribution. Sounds like what you were saying earlier.
Yeah, she has, again, when everybody is saying the same thing, there is an element of truth in it, by saying that there may be some level of culpability of banks in the activity of POS operators. I don't know whether they share the commission or revenue. You can just hear that there is, bank will tell you we don't have money to give you, the teller. But where a POS operator come, you get 500,000, 1 million as the case may be. So if it is not the bank itself, maybe the bank officials, I don't know. That's why I say CBN need to do micro regulation around that space. Without that, we're in for something stronger in 2025 and beyond.
What do all of these developments signal for the future of banking in Nigeria?
I'm not a prophet, but it has been predicted 5 years ago, and that prediction become louder and stronger, that banks will become smaller. When I say smaller, not in terms of their balance sheet. Yeah. Banks will become smaller, but bank will become bigger. That is the prediction, and that is what we're seeing. Now you can see how fintech, digital banks are cherry-picking their services. You know, we don't know what will happen through technology in the next few years, where you may even become a bank to yourself and I'll become a bank to myself. But clearly, the prediction is that bank will become smaller, but banking will become larger.
Let's take Matthew's call from Akure. Good morning, Matthew. Matthew, are you there? Please go ahead with your contribution. Oh, I don't think that the network is good. But thank you for calling in, Matthew. So you are an investment specialist. I was thinking that perhaps you can advise investors on how to navigate the current banking landscape in Nigeria. You're advocating for a stricter regulation of the POS space. Are you going to advise any investor to open POS centers in the new year?
You know, the POS also space is also a space we have used for empowerment. You know, as people are being taken out from bike driving, you know, across the sea, a lot of people. So it's an area where entrepreneurship, and you know, so these are the advantages or the upsides. I said that one of the upsides before is it is the most helpful channel for financial inclusion in the rural areas. But if also employment, entrepreneurship, family, economy, we've seen it serve very, very good.
But if CBN told your path now, it will become less lucrative for the business personnel there, right?
I don't think so.
Okay.
It may become less lucrative on the very short term, but on the long term, that space will become more sustainable and more sophisticated, such that it will even encourage investors to play in there. Investors are not going to put their money in an environment that is unregulated, that is uncertain, that is not sustainable. So you talk about me being an investment specialist, and you say you advise investors to go into that space. The starting point is for CBN to regulate, so that it is easy, because investors need to take risks, but that risk must be calculated, must be predictable, must be certain. That environment is not certain for now.
We keep increasing interest rates, you know, as a strategy to bring down inflation. But there's also the impact it's having on businesses. What strategy do you think we must opt for this new year?
For strategy to bring down inflation?
Yes, exactly.
I think
because Mr. President is very ambitious that he would drive it down to 15%.
I join him in that ambition to say that we want it to happen, you know, but it's not going to be fought using just one weapon or one tool, you know. We all know that one of the major indicators that fuels inflation in Nigeria is exchange rate, because 65% of what we eat, what we buy, what we wear, where we stay, that's our build in Nigeria. 65% of all of these things around us are imported items.
Please hold that thought for a minute. Let's take Samuel's call from Abuja. Good morning, Mr. Samuel.
Hello?
I can hear you. Please go ahead with your contribution.
Yeah, I want to say, so interesting the topic of today. If you look at it, I have experience during the December period when you enter a bank and you see most of the POS customer, they will come with a lot of ATM card and withdraw everything from the thing. You that you are banking with them, you couldn't have access to that money to withdraw to even to use. And then I heard when the second person was saying about the ATM, you know, like in my community, that is my local government, only one bank, which is like two communities in that local government, and they have only one bank. And before they will go to that particular place, take them like spending no less than 10,000 or thereabout. So the charges of the POS people will become much on those people. And then even within Abuja here, you see that you will go to the bank, you will not have access to the money, but when you go to the POS, the money is there for you, and the charges they are giving you is so high. And I think the CBN need to work with these people and be able to direct those situations.
Thank you for your contribution, Samuel.
Maybe patient with, but those in the other community or the villages, they don't have access to the bank. So
All right. I think your point is very well, stated. So one thing is certain: even if we get more cash to the bank, we have to find out where all those cash are going to, if it doesn't end up in the hands of US. But you were talking about, the power of exchange rate and how it impacts on inflation. I think the 2025 spending plan pegs it at 1,500 per dollar.
He pegs it at 1,500. Today is 15th or 16th of January. Yet we've not seen exchange rate at 1,005 yet. 15 days is part of 365 days. It's just a food for thought. So, like I said, I joined the president and presidency in their quest to drag inflation down to 15% from 30-something%, about 34%, around 34% now. And I'm saying that if we're going to achieve that, something drastic have to happen to exchange rate, because 65% of everything we buy, use, eat in Nigeria have exchange rate, can I say exchange rate content?
Indeed.
Simple as that. And if we're going to do that, Nigeria need to earn more dollar, as we say. Nigeria need to probably import, render more services that we have to receive payment in foreign currency. That is a sustainable way. Every other thing is just what I can call low-hanging fruit. And probably
there's a lot of optimism around local production. I mean, local refining with Dangote, Port Harcourt, and we had worries also coming upstream. Are you optimistic that this will also help improve things in that sector?
I think so. At least the minimum is that the amount of money or FX we are spending to import refined petroleum, which accounts about 30% of our total FX spending, will moderate, not completely disappear, because NNPC, I heard, is still importing, even while the Dangote refinery and some other refineries are trying to find their foot.
Economist and investment specialist Dr. Vincent Nwani, thank you so much for joining us on the program this morning. And Happy New Year to you. Well, that's our show today, everyone. Thanks for being a part of it. We're back tomorrow. By the way, we're counting